This tutorial is a great one to break out your favorite fabric scraps, your most colorful zippers, and even a little vinyl. Welcome to the Sewing Report. I'm Jen. This channel is all about making sewing and crafts fun and approachable, and I've got a fun one for you today. This one involves working with zippers, bias tape, and yes, even clear vinyl. I'm also going to show you some tips I picked up for making it a little bit easier to work with vinyl. Officially, I'm calling this free pattern the Super Simple Vinyl Zippered Pouch. It combines fabric and vinyl for the best of both worlds. Now, you can really sew this item any time of the year, but I'm considering this part of the holiday sew-along since I did use some festive fabrics. There are also so many different ways you can customize and embellish these zippered pouches. You can add embroidery to the fabric part, maybe some trim like pom-pom trim, or a million different other things like decorative stitches. So these can be made to suit just about anybody, or maybe a gift for yourself. Some of the supplies and fabric featured in this video are available in the Sewing Report Etsy shop. I've also done some previous technique videos that will help you in making this project. This free pattern template is available on the Sewing Report website. Below in the description box, you'll find a link to the blog post, and that's where you can download it. There are two pieces. The curved piece is for the vinyl, and the rectangle is for the fabric. Print out at actual size or 100% and cut them on the lines. This is 12 gauge clear glitter vinyl. To trace and cut out the vinyl pattern pieces, I used my hardware store washers for pattern weights and substituted a permanent Sharpie for my usual marking pens. I also don't use my fabric scissors to cut vinyl, just regular all-purpose scissors. For the main fabric, I recommend interfacing the pieces or using a heavier material such as canvas. I've already fused an interfacing called Pellon Shape Flex SF101 to the back of this Christmas tree fabric. To make the pouch, you'll need to cut 2 vinyl pieces, 2 of the main interfaced fabric and 2 of the lining. All of the fabric is quilting cotton, and this is a good one to bust through some of those scraps. You'll need a zipper or zipper tape that is at least 12 inches in length. If you choose zipper tape, that also includes installing one of the pulls onto it. I do have a separate video with detailed close-ups, but here's a little excerpt. Okay, so I'm going to do the left side first, like this. All right, and then while I'm holding it, I'm going to insert the right side, and hopefully they line up pretty well. Okay, luckily there's a pretty good starter here. All right, look at that. Really easy. I know sometimes you might run into the thing where this is uneven and you might have to do it a couple times just to get it lined up, but check this out. At this point, I've got the pattern pieces all cut out, zipper tape ready to go, and prepackaged 1/2-inch double fold bias tape. For this project, you need at least 26 inches of bias tape, and I have a previous video on making your own. We won't be using pins in this one, but I do have some of these craft clips and plan to glue baste some parts. Place the top edge of the vinyl next to the bottom long side of the fabric, and flip over so they're right sides together. Although technically the vinyl doesn't really have a right side, so that's kind of foolproof. Clip them together. We're not using pins because I want to avoid making unnecessary holes in the vinyl. I'll be demonstrating on the Juki DDL-8700 sewing machine, but you can use whichever sewing machine you have. I was able to use a 3.0 stitch length the entire time. Recently, I picked up an accessory kit and it came with 3 different sized feet, and I do use all of them in this tutorial. With a 1/4-inch seam allowance, sew the fabric and vinyl pieces together. This is one of the first times I've sewn with vinyl, and I didn't do anything special or even use a Teflon foot. The needle is a size 90/14, and thread is Glide 60 weight in white. Believe it or not, I didn't backstitch for most of this project either. You're probably wondering, okay, how do I press this without melting it? This is where a mini iron and the Clover hot ruler comes in handy. With the fabric on top, I quickly pressed over the stitches to lock them in, then folded it open with the seam allowance on the fabric side. Butt the edge of the seam right up against the hot ruler. You can press the seam down and the ruler protects the vinyl. I think I had the iron set to medium heat, still with the largest foot on, top stitch or edge stitch, using the edge of the foot as a guide. I cannot even express how much I'm enjoying the Juki DDL-8700. Sewing on it just feels so easy. The reason I call for at least a 12-inch zipper is so there's enough leeway to keep the pull completely out of the way. Figure out which piece you want to be the front of the pouch and start with that. The pull should be off to the left, and place it right side down on the fabric edge. We'll be glue basting with Elmer's washable school glue in a fine tip bottle. Run a line of glue just inside the edge on the right side of the fabric. Place the zipper edge on the fabric edge and press it with your fingers. Get the lining fabric ready to go. Run another line of glue on the inside edge of the zipper tape. Then take the lining piece and place it on top right side down and press it with your fingers. Let the glue dry for a bit. You can help it along by hitting it with a dry iron, but I still left it for about 15 to 20 minutes. Back at the sewing machine, sew with a 1/4-inch seam allowance. I often get asked if the glue gums up the sewing machine needle, and I haven't had any issues with that as long as the glue is actually dry. The reason I specifically use Elmer's washable school glue is because it's non-toxic and it washes out of fabric. Fold both sides of the fabric away from the zipper and press carefully. You want a neat, straight edge that's right at your stitch line. I decided to try something a little different to hold the pieces together, Sew Tight's magnets. Honestly, you probably don't have to do this, but you can if you're worried about the lining side flopping around. I switched out to the medium size foot and used that as my guide for top stitching. Time to repeat this process for the other side. Reminder, the main fabric will be right side up and the zipper face down. Then the lining fabric will be right side down on top of the zipper. Here's how I hid the raw seams. On the main panels, the seam allowance is pressed up and away from the vinyl. For the back, I folded under the ends of the lining to match that front side. The hot ruler came in handy again, both to create a fold line and protect the vinyl from the iron. Just inside the fold, I ran a line of glue and pressed the lining into place. I did hit it quickly with the iron, keeping the vinyl covered up. Let's switch back to the small narrow foot. Edge stitch front side up, but because the lining matches up, the stitches should catch the back and look very similar. There will be 2 neat lines of stitching on the outside of your pouch. Moving on to the final steps of construction, take the entire piece you have and fold it in half with the zipper in the middle. Make sure the main fabric is actually on the outside. We're not done with the craft clips yet. Use them to hold the pieces together. Apologies, my hair is in the way for a bit of this section. Lay out the bias tape roughly over the perimeter of the pouch, leave a bit extra and cut off the rest. Because starting off sewing directly on the zipper is tricky, I'll be starting off in the center on each side and sewing toward the zipper. With about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, baste the 2 sides together. You can see I'm starting from the middle and working my way out to the end, then repeating on the other half. If you have some type of magnetic seam guide, it really helps for this next step. We'll be starting off stitching the bias tape onto the back of the pouch. The bias tape has 4 sections lengthwise, and each is about a ½ inch, as the width is 2 inches. Stitch down the tape just inside that first fold line. The seam allowance here is around 3/8 of an inch. I started sewing past the zipper, but backstitched up to the zipper. Don't worry about speed here, take your time, and carefully hold the bias tape in place, matching up the edges. The reason I'm not sewing directly on the fold line is to account for the thickness of the project. When I go to flip it over on the other side, I want it to just barely cover up that first stitch line. The curved corners are the trickiest sections. Lots of lifting of the presser foot and repositioning the tape. At least when you're using a seam guide, you don't have to constantly wonder whether or not the seam allowance is correct. A sewing awl is a good tool to use whenever you need to hold down fabric very close to the needle instead of putting your fingers in harm's way. The bias tape has been attached to the back of the pouch. Now we'll be flipping it over to the front and tucking in the edges. Clip off excess tape, but leave about an inch extra. To relieve tension in the fabric on those curved sections, clip up to but not past the stitch line. See how the fabric lies flatter and smoother? Apologies, my hair is in the way again for much of this part, but I folded in the bias tape and flipped it around to the front of the pouch and used clips to hold it in place. Ideally, the bias tape on the front should just barely cover up the stitch line you made on the back. At the curved corners, I really loaded up on the clips. To create a neat bias tape finish, I opened up the end like this and folded it down, then back together using a clip to secure. Do the same thing on the other side. It's a lot of clips, but I don't want any sections to shift around at the sewing machine. We're starting off sewing at the bulkiest part of the project, and I'm being very careful to maintain that bias tape placement. The final step is to edge stitch using the inside fold of the bias tape lined up with the left side of the narrow foot. The seam allowance is about 1/8 of an inch. For the first few stitches, I turned the hand wheel manually, backstitched to the start of the bias tape, then sewed forward again. Remove the clips as you approach them, and hopefully the stitches will catch onto the back of the tape as well. Going over the curved parts, use the awl to hold down the bias tape close to the presser foot. If you're more of a beginner, I do have videos all about sewing curves and corners that may be helpful. backstitch again at the stopping point near the zipper. Check it out, a zipper pouch you can see inside of with totally finished seams. All in, cutting and sewing these zippered pouches really didn't take me very long, and I'm kind of a slow sewist. You could easily cut and sew several of them probably in an afternoon, and maybe even have time for a snack. This probably isn't the last you've seen of this project. This is so easy and fun to make. I think I'm gonna do a few more variations to give you guys some more ideas. And if you're new here and you found this helpful, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up on the video. Leave me a comment here and also subscribe so you can join in on the fun. We do lots of different types of projects. I also do some live streams sometimes. There's also an entire holiday sew-along playlist so you can get some more ideas. Be sure to check that out. Anyways, I'm Jen with the Sewing Report. I'll see you guys again in the next video, and remember, whatever you're doing, make it fun.